Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to the MCC Muslim Community Center of East Bay. I want to welcome everyone and invite you to have a seat. And Shaykh Alaeddin, if you can join us here at the table. Thank you. Give everybody a minute to settle down, inshallah.
I'm putting this table back.
Shaykh Alaeddin, if you could join us up here. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, welcome. So I just want to give a few introductory remarks. So since the election last Tuesday, we've been waking up every morning to some pretty interesting news. This morning, we had a story in the Washington Post citing FBI data released today that shows that hate crimes against Muslims have spiked last year to their highest level since 9/11. Highest level since 9/11. And that's an increase, one, that experts and advocates are saying is fueled by anger over terrorist attacks, but there's been a lot of anti-Islamic rhetoric on the campaign trail. So according to this FBI data, we've had 257 anti-Muslim incidences in 2015, and that's up nearly 67% from the year prior. So really when you respond to the statistics, and indeed responding to this election in general, a few things really snap into focus. And one, we really need to start hearing each other's voices. There's enough slogans already. We really need to start working towards understanding and not so much scoring points with one another. And we really need to find a way to move forward that respects and values every member of our community. So this panel tonight is one small step towards that. And just to peer into the audience here tonight, you'll find that it's not only Muslims. We have many people of other faiths who have come here with a genuine interest to make sure that our community is not harmed by this rhetoric. Because this election in this country, we all know its ideals, its peoples, they're all bigger than any of our leaders. We'll survive, we'll thrive, and we'll be stronger because of that. And as a man of faith, I try to be optimistic in these times. I feel that there's a hidden wisdom at work here. And despite that, despite everything, I feel we owe a gratitude to a note of gratitude to our president-elect and others who've maligned and otherized us in this campaign, because they've really torn off the fig leaf of Islamophobia. I see our once disjointed communities really coming together and uniting and finding support, and that support has been great. Just in the past week here at the MCC, our website has been inundated with messages, donations from people of faith from all over the country, all over the Bay Area, even Canada, and we're really grateful for each of them. And this panel tonight, I hope we can pick up some spiritual insights, some practical advice to stay safe, to really unleash our potential and to thrive no matter what's to come. So I'll turn this over to the panel, so inshallah. I just have 4 housekeeping items. We are taking written questions, and index cards will go around. Please write your question, and we'll be around to pick it up. So this 1-hour panel will end at 8 o'clock. We'll break for Isha, and then we'll rejoin. The Khalil Center has generously offered to have breakout sessions after this. So we'll be joining with youth, and we'll kind of break you all up and with a counselor. Also the Islamophobia Research and Documentation Center at UC Berkeley, they're asking Bay Area Muslims to share their experience on being Muslim. So there's a flyer up on the community board, and there's a web link on that. And lastly, we want to really continue this discussion that we're beginning tonight. And so Imam Suhaib Webb, who's an American Muslim scholar of great renown, he'll be joining us at MCC on Sunday, November 27th. And he'll be continuing and offering thoughts and spiritual insights on where we can go as a community. So that'll be at 6 p.m. on Sunday, November 27th. So first I'm going to turn it over to Shaykh Alaeddin, and we'll go from there. Jazakallah khair.
So, one, thank you all for being here. Something that I've said at difficult political moments is that being at a mosque, being visibly Muslim, is itself an act of resistance against the hatred and bigotry that we're seeing sweeping our country. Before you really hear much from me, I'm curious, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on for you? Do folks want to shout out just what's on your mind? Like one word to describe how you're feeling.
Alhamdulillah.
Okay, good, good, good. So it's a good thing that I asked this question after Shaykh Alaeddin talks. How are others feeling? What are your raw emotions right now?
Anxious.
Anxious. Okay.
Sad.
Sad.
Worried.
Worried. How are others feeling?
Hope.
Hope. Okay, good. Who did a lot of comfort eating this weekend? Okay, good. Yeah, let's own it. And who spent a lot of time with family and friends? Who disconnected from the internet? Okay. How many of you watched the election results come in on Tuesday night? And how many of you didn't because you just couldn't tolerate it? Are folks feeling afraid? Hard one to admit, but it's something that we're hearing a lot about from our clients. So for context, I think for those of you that know my political leanings, I'm not surprised that our country elected Donald Trump. We live at a time when police officers kill unarmed black men and women without any consequences. We live in an era where the president that some of us are sad to see go has overseen the drone bombings of US citizens in other countries without any due process or recourse. Many of us worry about informants in our own community. We don't know who we can trust. Our children are being bullied at school. According to studies that we've done at CAIR, 55% of Muslim students in California public schools, of all places, have experienced some form of bias-based bullying. And some of that, by the way, comes from their teachers. So the saddest answers we get from children are around whether or not they feel safe around their teachers, where they should feel most safe. And so I'm not surprised that we elected Donald Trump. Not we, I'm not taking credit for that. I had nothing to do with it. We worked for months and months to mobilize the Muslim vote, though. Organizations that we partner with called people in swing states. People went door to door. And yet not only do we have a right-wing president-elect, we also have a Republican-controlled Congress, and possibly soon, a 9th Supreme Court justice who will be more conservative than Scalia was. And yet still, the emotion that I heard from community members on Wednesday was shock and despair. We had people who, mind you, had been calling our office for days prior to the election because there were over 100 visits targeting members of the Muslim community where the FBI was coming to their homes and saying, tell us about Al-Qaeda. I don't know anything about Al-Qaeda. I doubt you do either. But they're wasting tax dollars doing it. So that's what we're going into before the election. And the day after the election, we're not a counseling office. We don't provide therapy services. We provide legal services. And we tell people we're not qualified to talk you through your emotions. But people are afraid of their family members being deported. They're afraid of increased hate crimes. They're afraid of increased law enforcement surveillance, and the list goes on. Just today, there has been news, and I think it just confirms what we know, is that hate crimes are up. There are more hate crimes and incidents in the past year than there have been in any period since 2001. So imagine that. Anti-Muslim hate is worse today than it was in the months following 9/11. I don't mean to be depressing right after Shaykh Alaeddin was uplifting and giving us spiritual reminders, but I think it's important for us to be aware of reality. Much of the analysis around the election has been that those of us that weren't voting for Donald Trump were in a little bit of a bubble, thinking how would someone elect someone who is an open racist, an open misogynist, who's endorsed by the KKK? How could that happen? It was like we were out of touch with reality. And so we're starting to have these conversations in the community because we know people are afraid, and we want to make sure that we give them something to do with that energy, that anger, that fear, that concern, that channels into civic engagement. And we want to make sure that you have safety tips, that you know what your rights are should something happen. So I'll talk you through both of those in reverse order because I'm still processing the election, so you'll notice that my thoughts aren't always fully coherent tonight either. Around safety, around civil rights. If you experience a hate crime or incident, the basic things that we're telling people, do not escalate the situation, right? Do not make something that is verbal, physical if you can avoid it. Walk away. If you are in a safe setting, consider recording the situation. Some of you may have seen that viral BART video of a woman who's threatening deportation of another woman, and the lady says, I'm just recording you, right? She made a snap judgment there. I don't endorse the judgment because I wasn't there and I don't know. I think you really have to go with your gut feeling. And then report it. Many people in our community, myself included, take to Facebook to report things about our lives. A week from now, 2 weeks from now, when we're trying to talk about the Trump effect, we're not going to be able to pull all of the stories from Facebook. Like, that's just not something that's going to happen. And it's so important that this data exists, so that come January 20th, when President-elect Trump is sworn in, we can say, look at what's already happened. What are you going to do to protect communities against it? So who do you report to? Report to the local police department, report to CAIR, and if you're uncomfortable calling CAIR or the police department, talk to someone in the masjid leadership, right? But make sure that you're talking to a trusted source so that it gets documented. You want to report it anonymously? The people at your masjid will help you do that. CAIR will help you do that. Report hate crimes and hate incidents. I think many of you know what a hate crime is, right? Who knows what a hate crime is? Who can tell me what a hate crime is? In the front, do you want to tell me what a hate crime is?
Any crime that's committed against you because of your beliefs,
right.
Who you are, your race, ethnicity.
Yeah, exactly. So for those that didn't hear it, just a crime that's committed against you because of your beliefs, because of your protected characteristics, your gender, your race, your ethnicity, your national origin, or your religion. A hate incident, though, is something that a lot of people don't report or sometimes don't realize that they should report. Basic example, I'm walking down the street and someone calls me a towel head. They yell it from their car, they keep on walking. We're getting reports like this, but not enough, and we hear more about it on Facebook than we do via official reports. It's important that these things are documented too, because 2, 3, 4, 10 hate incidents, and we're going to worry about a hate crime happening in the community, right? So don't think it's a small deal or you don't want to waste our time. Please call us. Please make sure that you're reporting these things. That's what we're here for, so that we can make sure that we tell the story for the community. If your children report being bullied at school, if they come to you and they say, look, my teacher said this thing, or a peer said this thing, go to your school. You don't have to start a fight about it, right? You don't need to go in there yelling and screaming, but go to your school. Many times schools don't realize it's happening, but once they're put on notice, they're required by law to take steps to protect your children. Your kids can't learn if they don't feel safe at school. Know that sometimes your kids aren't going to be willing to talk to you about it. I remember not telling my parents everything, right? And sometimes, like, I'll talk about my childhood now, and they'll be like, what? We didn't know that. And it's like, well, I didn't tell you. I was 13. I wasn't going to tell you. So if your kids aren't already in a program at the masjid where they're in a youth group, where they're connected to other members of the community that maybe they would prefer to talk to, get them into a program like that. At a time where so many elected officials and media personalities are saying, hey, like, those Muslims are scary, it's important that your children feel comfortable with their identity and that they're connected to resources where they can go to for help. But again, if your child is being bullied or harassed at school, document it, keep a journal of it, talk to the people at the school so that they can take the necessary steps. And again, you can call CAIR for free legal help when something like this happens. We know that sometimes it can be challenging to navigate that process. And sometimes schools can be really frustrating to work with because they don't move fast enough or they don't take it seriously, or you don't know how to navigate it because it's a teacher and not another student that's involved. We sometimes think that these things don't happen in the Bay Area. We've heard about hate crimes in the Bay Area in just the last week. At San Jose State, a young woman was walking in the parking garage in broad daylight, and someone pulled her headscarf, pulled it so hard that she choked on it and fell to her knees. In San Jose, again, and I use San Jose because I think a lot of people just think San Jose is so great, right? But San Jose, San Francisco, Marin, we get these complaints everywhere. In San Jose a couple of years ago, I still remember a teacher said to a young girl wearing a headscarf, if you don't be quiet, I will pull that thing off your head. Many times we focus on the girls, but the boys face it too. And sometimes it's in the form of violence. Sometimes it's because their name is Muhammad, right? So it's not just the girls, it's also the boys. And it's not just people who wear headscarves, it's other people too. Around hate crimes, hate incidents, school bullying, law enforcement, harassment, the last thing I'll say is know that we're not alone. It can feel really isolating and it can feel alienating to think it's just Muslims, Muslims, Muslims. We're not unique in our being targeted by President-elect Trump. Him and his cabinet and everyone he's surrounding himself with, anti-immigrant, anti-undocumented, anti-LGBT, anti-woman, anti-black, right? Like the list goes on. He just appointed someone as a special advisor who comes from Breitbart, one of the most right-wing news sites in the country. And so don't feel alone in this either. I know today we're joined by friends and allies of other faiths, many of whom I've also heard from are struggling to process what this means for us, right? And so a question I'm asking people in thinking about civic engagement and how we move forward on this is we really appreciate all of the traffic to the MCC website. And we really appreciate people bringing us flowers. But are we doing that for other people? Are we doing that for other communities? We're blessed and challenged to live in the most progressive pocket of the country. If anyone secedes, it's going to be us first. But that's not an endorsement for secession, just that's where we are. And I heard a Cal Exit, again, not an endorsement, but if you want to talk Cal Exit, talk to the brother over there, right? There are a lot of people who want to hear us. And if we're thinking, well, why hasn't the church next door or the temple next door come to visit me? I would ask, well, why haven't we gone to visit them? How many of you have been to a city council meeting within the last year? I see 1, 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 hands. Okay. So I asked this question in Columbus, Ohio on Saturday, and like 30 hands went up. And then someone whispered to me, yeah, we all went when they passed the anti-Islamophobia resolution. Of course we went for that. I'm urging people to actually get engaged. It used to be that we would say, you know, it's a learning process, get engaged and like start to vote this year, city council next year, run someone from your community for office the year after that. No, we can't wait anymore. Know that even our elected officials are in the minority in this country. We have a Republican-controlled Congress and an entirely Democratic congressional delegation from the Bay Area. Every single member of Congress from the Bay Area is a Democrat. And they've been issuing statements nearly every day saying we stand with the Muslim community, we stand with immigrants. Today, Nancy Pelosi issued a statement in support of minority communities saying she was really worried about who Donald Trump is putting on his cabinet. Today also, the mayor of San Jose issued a statement saying we won't let the federal government come in and violate the rights of our communities. Mayor Ed Lee in San Francisco held a unity gathering where he had the program in Arabic, in Chinese, in Spanish, and in English to make sure that all of the people that were gathered knew that they were safe in their cities. And so on civic engagement, we can't wait anymore. I know many of us want to rest or take a break because the election is over. I would suggest that you go to the next Pleasanton City Council meeting, that you go to the next Dublin City Council meeting, the next San Ramon City Council meeting. People ask me, well, what do I do when I get there? Honestly, your first couple of meetings, just sit there. You will be bored, so make sure you caffeinate, right? But grab a copy of the agenda, go with some friends. If you feel compelled to do so, say something in public comment. Introduce yourself as a resident of the city. Say that you want to get engaged, you want to get more involved and engaged because of the elections, right? But if you don't want to say anything, just show up. Showing up is oftentimes where we're struggling to even get started. I'll stop there, but I look forward to the questions. Jazakallah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam ajma'in. Thank you all for coming tonight. Inshallah, today I'll be speaking on the spiritual perspective, but also the mental health perspective. I'm sort of speaking on both tonight, inshallah. And you might ask why I have somebody who's a mental health professional on a panel such as this, and my answer to that would be your own emotions that you shared. I heard anxiety, I heard fear, I heard anger, I heard, mashallah, lots of different emotions that we're all trying to process and figure out what to do next. And even in the question of why mental health, I will say and offer this. If you have a limp, it won't necessarily kill you, but your quality of life is not the same if you were able to walk straight. And that is the difference of someone who is struggling with emotions and not actually getting help for them and processing through them. And that's what I'm here to talk about today, inshallah. The American Psychological Association issued a survey to figure out how all Americans were feeling. And they found that over half of the American population was stressed out by the elections. Not a big surprise. But then if we look here in our very own community and how we're doing, we tend to focus a lot on the Muslim community. And the two speakers before me said the same thing, but I want to really push the point. Though we are grieving and though we are stressed out, we are not alone. One of my therapists works in a predominantly Latino school as a school counselor, with the majority of the students whose parents are undocumented, as are the children. They came to school on Friday saying, You may not see me on Monday with tears, crying. The kids were crying, crying. You may not see me. I don't know what's happening. My parents at home are packing their bags. So this emotion is very raw and very real for many, many communities. The nurse practitioner who works in my clinic came to me and wanted to say, I want to just check on you, Dr. Awaad. How are you doing? How is the Muslim community doing, knowing my involvement? And I told her about these town hall meetings and how we're doing, and she said, can I apologize on behalf of all the white people in America for what's happening here? I said, Barb, we're all going through this together. And then she started to cry. She cried so hard that I found myself hugging her. I was consoling her, mashallah. This emotion is being shared by so many people throughout the country, and you must know that not to feel isolated in this time. Also, I want to say, and Brother Munir shared this at the beginning, we're being flooded with emails of support. On Saturday, we're doing support groups with the Muslim teen girls in Masjid al-Huda in Union City. And the neighbor next door sent an email to the masjid saying, I want you to know that I am so proud that this masjid is in my community. And if you feel threatened or you feel sad or feel upset, don't. We, the residents of Union City, have your back. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Right? These are things that really should uplift us. If you look at ISNA and ICNA and some of the larger Muslim organizations, they're being flooded with letters of support to Muslims from other organizations that are not Muslim, in fact, large non-Muslim organizations that are sending these letters of support. So please know that even though we are feeling these emotions, we're not alone. And please also know that there's a lot of people who are really, essentially, praying for us too. MashaAllah. So here, I want to then move into and talk about these emotions that all of you shared. Because what's normal and natural are, when a person is grieving, and we are all grieving, there are 5 stages of emotion that we go through that are absolutely normal. They're not necessarily linear, meaning one after another. Sometimes they happen side by side. Sometimes one stage jumps in front of another. But just to review, and you may have heard this before, whenever you feel hurt or grieving or upset, right, whether this is the loss of a loved one or the loss of the feeling of safety within your own country, which many of us are feeling right now, we start with denial. I think many of us were thinking, no, there's no way this could have happened. Please wake me up from this nightmare, right? That tends to be the very first emotion that comes, and that is very normal. Followed by anger and hurt, right, and pain. Why? I went to see one of my Muslim neighbors, and she said to me, how, the very next morning after the lecture, she said, how could this be? Do all of Americans, are they all like this, racist? I said, no, mashallah, right? But there's definitely this anger and hurt of how could this have happened, subhanallah. But you take that anger, you take that anxiety, you take those feelings and put it towards something better, right? Like working with your neighbors to figure out how best to serve this is the masjid, right? To serve the church next door, so that there is a collaboration if there hadn't been one before. Or your coworker at work, open up the dialogue. They might have a gush of emotions, like my nurse practitioner did when I spoke of my own emotions and how I was feeling. Work with each other and use that anger to actually make something productive out of that very strong emotion. Another emotion, another stage is bargaining, right? Ya Allah, if you make him go away, I'll do such and such. Right? We tend to do this, bargaining, right? That's also a natural emotion. So maybe turn it into something a little more constructive. Ya Allah, is this a wake-up call? Let me see that, give me insight to figure out why this happened. Was this a wake-up call to us in some way? Maybe in my own practice, in my own identity, in my own strength of faith and identity? Maybe there's something more I should be doing here, right? Depression is another one. And I think Zahra asked about comfort food and feeling down. Now, we kind of joke about feeling depressed, and what that means, but real depression, I want to point out here, is the kind where for a couple weeks straight, you're not able to actually function. You're on the couch and you're not getting up, right? You're not able to take care of your daily activities. Or anxiety that enters so deeply into your everyday life that you're not able to function and do the things you typically do. A student can't go to school, a mom at home isn't able to take care of her kids, a person that's working isn't able to get back to a job. Those are red flags for seeking professional help and care, right? And I urge you, and we have our Khalil Center table in the back here, which is a Muslim counseling center, seek help and support if you or your loved ones are feeling any of those emotions beyond kind of what's time limited, right? Within this week, we all kind of feel a bit depressed. But if it's getting further, you must seek out professional help, inshallah. And then we get to eventually acceptance. And acceptance here does not mean complacency. Like Zahra and Shaykh Alaeddin were saying, there are things we must do, right? But acceptance means understanding the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if this is meant to happen and meant to be, then He is all knowledgeable of why such things happen. And even if I don't understand why they happen, then He has a divine plan. And this is part of our faith. Understanding that Allah has a divine plan, right? Now what do I do about that? Because a lot of people said, oh, if it was such and such who was president, it would have been better. And Shaykh Alaeddin started by saying, the warning that comes to us from our faith of that you may like something, but it's actually harmful to you. And you may detest something, but it's actually better for you, right? And we don't know exactly what is about to happen. And the Prophet ﷺ spoke of these emotions. He spoke of gham, right? And he spoke of ham. Ham being the anxiety or fear of something that's already happened, while gham is the same, anxiety or fear of something that hasn't yet happened. And He warned us of those. And He also gave us, consoled us by saying that these are real emotions, and make dua for protection against them, right? So as we're kind of figuring out what to do next, and many of you are parents, right? Do we have many parents in the audience? Many who are really trying to figure out what to say to their children or how to engage in conversation with their children. Before we touch on that point, we must first say, take care of yourself. Take care of yourselves first. I'll get to the children in a minute. But take care of yourself first. Because children pick up the emotions and anxieties and the fears of the adults around them. Like the kids that I was talking about earlier, they saw their parents crying at home, they came to school crying too, right? They pick up on these things very, very much. And if you are not in a good place yourself, know that your children won't play either. And that is the very first step. To make sure that you process your own emotions. So you might say, okay, well how? Take a break. Zahra asked, did you unplug from social media and the news? I would encourage you to. Stop following it so closely. Unplug, because you will regain a sense of balance by doing that. You may follow, of course, but just not so intensely. Also reach out to the support people. Who are those? Are they the mashayikh? Are they your elders? Is it your mother? Is it your sister, your brother? Are they your best friend? Are they counselors? Who are they? Whoever they may be, reach out for support. Make sure you are in a good place and you're not spiraling, because that is the first step of actually helping your children. Now let's talk about children. What do we say to them? Because we as parents, and I also being a parent here, we teach our children not to be racist and not to be bigots. And then we find that our president-elect has statements of racism and bigotry and is going to be the head of this country. So it's difficult. What do you say? And how do you explain properly? Well, explain as simply as possible. Break it down to children. They don't understand complex messages. They don't understand sarcasm. Again, the children who are crying, their parents may have said that and may have cried, but remember, children are very concrete. They're very literal in their understanding. The parent may say, oh, we're going to have to leave now, and the child really thinks they're going to leave, when maybe it was just a figure of speech. So explain things as simply as possible to children. Explain the results of the election and what this might mean, right, for our country and for them. But the best way to actually talk to children is ask them what they understand. Ask them how they're feeling, and then go from there. Figure out how much they know. And I'm amazed of how much our children know. We run the girls' youth groups here on Friday nights, right? We have like over 150 girls running around here on Friday nights, mashallah, for the Rahma Foundation. And it's amazing the talk that is coming from the girls. Amazing how much they really know and how young they are. And reach out to them and listen for misinformation. Listen for misconceptions. Listen for inaccurate information and then correct it. right? If you find that they're kind of built up this big thing in their head that's not really true, actually explain it to them in a very simple manner. Pay attention, listen and pay attention to what it is that they're actually viewing on TV. You might have the news on, right? And are watching, but they're in the background and they're hearing all of this too. So be careful of what you have playing and be careful of what they are watching too, right? Because they're soaking up and picking up on so much of this. And then if you do want to watch the news, use it as an opportunity to actually watch certain things, to watch with them, and then use it as a discussion point, right? What did you understand from this is for older children. What did you understand from this? What messages did you get from this? Actually have a dialogue. And I'll tell you why dialogue is so important. I have a friend who told me that when 9/11 happened, she was in high school. And when she came home with the news, she really wanted to figure out what on earth just happened. And her parents completely shut down. They were very well-meaning Muslim parents, but she felt that it was such a taboo subject to talk about that she just couldn't, and she felt stifled in talking about it. Let's not repeat these same mistakes again. Let's give our children the opportunity to actually talk about what's going on and how they're processing. Who said what in school to them? Who gave them a funny look, right? Let's figure out what's happening here so that we can help them appropriately. And model your own reactions. So even though you're grieving and you're really fearful perhaps, monitor that and model proper reaction, inshallah, because it will really help them. Also, engage in activities that whatever your values are, which of course is values of anti-racism and anti-bigotry, actually act upon that. And I'll share with you a personal story. My daughter, who's 8, and again I said I was amazed at how much these children have been following, because at 8, I can't remember a single thing that happened during a presidential election. Not a single thing can I repeat to you. Yet these children are able to repeat back like whole statements of different candidates. They can word for word repeat things, right? And she got so interested and so involved in this election season and would come home, and she's a very sensitive child, so she would come home and really share her fears and say, Mama, I heard that Trump is going to do such and such and such, or he said such and such and such. So on the day of the election, she came home and said, I did my homework at recess so I can watch the elections. I said, SubhanAllah. She left her recess to do her homework so that she can come watch the elections. So we let her. And we're watching, and it's getting later and later, and we're realizing it's going into the direction that, we're getting scared what direction this is going in, and she can't stay up any later. She has school the next day. So we said to her, Sumaya, you can't stay up any longer. I want to see who's going to win. And because the polls were showing that it was heading towards Trump, her father and I decided to do something to model our own way of reacting. We offered her cake. We offered her cake. And at first she said, what are you doing? Are you celebrating Trump? And we said, no. We're celebrating the victory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're celebrating the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is victorious regardless of who wins. That He is the creator of any human that may take that post, good or bad. And that all is in His control. So like any 8-year-old, she ate her cakes. The next morning, she woke up and said, who's president? And when we broke the news to her, I said, how are you doing, Sumaya? And she said, Allah's in control. Even if Trump builds a wall between us and Mexico. Word for word, inshallah. And at that point I realized modeling your own reactions is the most powerful to the children, honestly. And I think that's, inshallah, a very important thing. And the last thing I will end with is a story of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this story that we learn, it is said that Ibn Abbas could not have been any older than 13. In fact, some scholars say that he was about 8 or 9, so about my daughter's age. And one day he was riding next to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet said to him, young man, shall I teach you some words? Be mindful of Allah, and He will take care of you. Be mindful of Him, and you shall find Him at your side. If you ask, ask of Allah. And if you need help, seek it from Allah. And then in another narration, it goes on to say, and know if the whole world were to gather to harm you, they cannot except by the will of Allah. And if the whole world gathered to help you, they cannot except by the will of Allah. The pens have lifted and the pages have dried. Right? And so with that, I just want to make sure that we all walk away from here realizing and knowing that Allah is in control. And with that said, we're going to figure out how to take the next steps together, inshallah. And after our Q&A panel, which we're about to get into, I want to encourage you that we do have counselors here from the Khalil Center, Muslim therapists who are able to do support groups. So for those who'd like to stay behind after Aisha to do so, we highly welcome you, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.